So yeah, even though we haven't... Hey, Shub! Even though we haven't at all established that this is his pen, or even that we've established that it isn't Ray's pen, I guess I'm presenting the pen.
Objection!
Yeah, wow. That's... Not off to a promising... like, for me to have to backwards logic it to figure that out... It's very odd, especially because she never even said, like, I've never seen that pen before. Like, we have no reason for this pen to be proof that it's not, that he was in there. Many Memo-san, until now I've had a firm belief that newspapers are in the business of uncovering and publishing the truth. You're spot on there. The press doesn't lie, which is why I'm proud to wear the emblem of the Shoyu News on my arm. See what it looks like? In a way, that's more Many Memoism. Sadly, though, it seems the journalists who write for those papers don't always share the same passion for the truth. What are you suggesting with those recriminatory words, Counsel? Many Memo-san, do you recognize this fountain pen? Ugh! This pen was found at the scene of Miss Brett's death. In fact, the murdered victim was gripping it in her hand as she died. What are you? If you look at the barrel of the pen, you'll notice that its owner's initials are engraved there. R.M. Yes, thank you for bringing that up, Counsel. The initials of the accused, Ray Mambami. Is it a coincidence, I wonder, that your initials are also RM? No! Raiten Many Memo. RM. That's horse dung. Can't you see? One of the central tenets of Many Memoism is being a pencil user. True. Oh, he's got ink on his hand, though. Is that gonna... And yet, as the court will clearly be able to see, on your right hand, there is a very obvious blue ink stain. It would appear that you must have rather carelessly left it somewhere recently. Your favorite fountain pen, that is. Horsey horse dung! Many Memo-san, is it not the case that before she died, you met with Giselle Brett in that beach hut? Why should we listen to this absurd nonsense? It's nothing but another excuse. Exactly. Shoyu News will stand behind me all the way. I deny everything. There must be as many people with the initials RM as there are stars in the night sky. I'm suddenly Kaito. The defense has neither the time nor the inclination to count every star in the sky. And there's no need anyway, because this pen has more to tell. Yes, there is another clue. A clue that undeniably proves who its owner really is. In that case, Counsel, the defense will now show the court where this alleged clue lies. Of course, Your Excellency. The clue on this fountain pen that clearly reveals its owner's identity is... Oh, whoops. No, I've already looked at it. Go away. Go away. As well as the initials, there is also an emblem on this fountain pen. An emblem that you will, of course, recognize, Many Memo-san. Goodness me, it's the emblem of Shoyu News. In other words, the owner of this pen is an employee of the Shoyu News, whose initials are RM. Suddenly, the stars in the night sky don't seem so numerous, do they? Well, Many Memo-san, how do you respond? No! Wait a minute. If there was poison in the pen, then he couldn't have been writing in it. And if he wasn't writing in it on that day, It means that ink stain's been on his hands for a real long time. Haven't they invented soap yet? Explain yourself, witness. Ha, ha, ha. So, this is how the mighty Supreme Court works, is it? Using coercive tactics to have well-meaning citizens reveal harmless secrets. I've used nothing but honest tactics. Alright then, fine. I won't try to hide it anymore. Yes, not long before that grim tragedy unfolded, I, a Show You News reporter on behalf of the public, conducted an interview with the Englishwoman. An interview? You never mentioned this before. When exactly was this? As I said, it was before that little evil student girl showed her face in the hut. I couldn't have lasted more than 2 or 3 minutes, that's all. It's just a brief exchange. But it came to nothing. As we many memoists say, people don't pay their dues for unworthy news. What is this music? It's new music. It's rather jovial. However insignificant you deem it to be, this court cannot overlook the meeting between yourself and the victim. You will testify now under oath about the precise nature of this meeting and what transpired. Got it. Yes, all right, but on one condition. Condition? In all good conscience, I couldn't speak out alone about this. You need to call back the earlier witness, Soseki Nanatsume. Soseki Natsume-san. Soseki-san? Oh yes, according to my notes here, that man has a secret of his own. Brace yourselves, because it's not a harmless one. It's big. What? Many memoism states that one man's secret is every other man's front-page story. Very well. I'll grant the witness's request in this instance. But why? That doesn't make sense. Officer, summon the earlier witness back to the stand. Soseki-san hiding something? I asked the Englishwoman for an interview, but she declined, so I left the hut without making a fuss. Then, watching secretly from the outside, I saw the woman being stabbed, and the other witnesses come running. The detective realized that the victim still had a pulse, so he ran... Wait, what? I think we missed a step. The detective realized the victim still had a pulse, so he ran off to fetch help. That's when this writer man here asked the woman a very significant question. He didn't say anything about that in his testimony, which is why many memoism demands I reveal it now. And yes, Soseki is very squirrely, as he was in the last game. You mean to say the victim? The victim regained consciousness? Well, and when she did, you decided to ask her a question? That's, true. Yes. He did, and that's not all. The woman gave him a very definite answer. An answer that incriminates the accused. And interestingly enough, does not count as hearsay under the... Wait for it. Shoot, what's the exception called? Dying utterance exception to hearsay. Or something like that. This is preposterous. Why am I only hearing about this now? Why didn't you mention this before, you yokel hack? It wasn't even a conversation. Yes, I did pose the withering English rose a question. I don't deny it. But she could no longer speak. She was barely conscious even. Counsel for the defense, I expect a thorough cross-examination to be conducted here. This court must and will know the truth. Absolutely, Your Excellency. The reporter is claiming that Miss Brett implicated Ray somehow? What on earth could have happened in that hut?
Hold it!
Shouldn't the prosecutor do anything? The prosecutor does nothing in this game. In any game. You asked her for an interview, you say? Well, of course I did. I wanted to ask her about the incident she was involved in at the end of last year. About the case in which Dr. John H. Wilson lost his life. That's not the way I phrased it. Many memoism calls for straight talking. Why did you murder Dr. Wilson, is how I put it to her. Yes, that sort of talking is as straight as a ruler. Ask every question as if you're asking for a menu in a restaurant, I say. It's the best way. A veteran at the paper taught me that. And how did Miss Brett answer? With one simple phrase. Mystery is a woman's charm. Whew, that told me. So I waltzed right out of there. Really? Something about that doesn't quite seem to fit together. Leave every room as if you're waltzing in a dance hall, I say. It's the best way. A veteran at the paper told me that. Oh, okay. Somehow I missed this. That in this one statement, he was like, I saw her get stabbed and the other witnesses come in.
Hold it!
It was very persistent of you, considering that Miss Brett had just turned you away. Persistence wins the prize. Many memoists will tell you that. Let them think you've left, and just when they lower your guard, that's when you swoop in for the scoop. And the fruits of your labor are all too apparent in this telling photograph. Though I'm sure the young yokel student would rather not be reminded of this damning evidence. Actually, it's thanks to that photograph that we managed to identify this witness. And now that you've found me, I'll tell you whatever you want to know. I've got nothing to hide. Pretty much everyone does. Because this, in case you missed it from last time, this is actually, this is the girl from the first game. And I guess the voice is the same too. Even though she wasn't voiced very much, there were only a handful of, like, voiced cutscenes in the game. But even those were, all of the actors seem to have Japanese, seem to have British accents. But this is Susato-san, disguised as a man, because you can't be a lawyer otherwise. Please do go ahead, witness. The court is eager to hear what you have to say. Try to stop me. There's a story to tell here, and I'm gonna tell it. Yes.
Hold it!
And Soseki-san remained behind in the hut? That's right, yep. Our author friend here was a blabbering wreck, shaking all over from his head to his toes, mustache twirling, eyes bulging. What do you expect? You don't know the terrifying troubles that taunted me whilst traveling abroad. Back behind baleful bars. They'll be coming for me, surely. That's all I could think. I felt as though I were gasping for air, drowning in a sea of cold sweat. Poor Soseki-san. His experiences in London have scarred him deeply. That's why he's still twitchy. As the world seemed to close in around me, I quietly recited a prayer to Amida Buddha. Eternal emptiness, empty eternity. The end is coming for me, surely. No sutras are to resound in my courtroom, please. Now we come to the crucial part. That's when it happened.
Hold it!
Now when I press on this, am I gonna, like, shift over to him or something? What question? What exactly did he say? Well, now, you should hear that from the horse's mouth, I think. Don't you, Mr. Writer Man? Arg! Out with it, you yokel hack! What did you say to her? What did you say to the dying Englishwoman? Well, In truth, I've been catching crabs at the water's edge and building castles in the sand, you see. Well, the seaside is a place to be at leisure, I suppose, even for a grown man. But then all of a sudden, from that little beach hut, a young girl's panic-stricken cries for help pierced the air. Ray. I ran up to the beach to see what was happening, to find the defendant leaning over the collapsed victim. As soon as Inspector Hosonaga saw Miss Brett on the ground, he sprinted off to get help. And then, just a moment later, I heard a faint moan. A moan from the dead Englishwoman. I nearly jumped out of my skin! But what did you ask her, Soseki-san? I asked her, who did this to you? Don't protract this any longer! How did the woman respond? She didn't! She said nothing in response. But... When in the stand, you will answer the questions asked of you, unambiguously. Now, without evasion or reticence, I demand that you amend your testimony. It's not his testimony. He doesn't have any testimony to amend. Well, I guess his testimony from before. I will! Who did this to you? But she never replied.
Hold it!
So you tried to find out who the culprit was. He who asks a question is a fool for a minute. He who does not remains a fool forever. That's a good quote. Having been labeled a criminal twice in my time in Great Britain, I was quick to make up my mind. Was it twice? Twice? He was suspected of the woman who got knifed down the street, but who was the other one? I've forgotten. Better to be a fool for a minute than remain a fool in prison forever. I like this guy. However, you indicated that the victim failed to respond. Is that correct? I know why. I know why the Englishwoman said nothing. She was ignoring me because of my stoop and mustache, because I'm Japanese. Oh dear. Soseki-san has really developed a dislike for the English, it seems. Having read the report on his time in Great Britain, I can't say I'm surprised at his xenophobia. But the Englishwoman didn't ignore you at all, did she, Mr. Riderman? Well, yes, all right. She did respond in a manner of speaking, I suppose. She just lifted a trembling finger and pointed in the direction of the defendant. Miss Brett pointed a finger at the defendant? Soseki-san, is that really true? It's not easy to stand here and say this, but when we first entered the beach hut, the Englishwoman was sprawled on the floor before us with the student girl standing on the far side of her. When I asked who did this to you, the Englishwoman summoned her last ounce of strength to point a trembling finger at the back of the hut. Which was, it can't be denied, in the direction of the student girl who stands accused today. Alright, so better if I didn't ask you that. Soseki-san, why on earth did you neglect to mention this in your original testimony? But, fiddlesticks, I say! It's so hard for them to localize this. Poor people. They're just like, just pretend. Just pretend. This is not a British court of law. You will respond in Japanese. Yes, of course. The Englishwoman did point her finger towards the back of the hut. But I was trembling. And she was trembling. And everything was a blur. And thinking about it, I feel as though perhaps she was pointing in a slightly different direction. Actually, no, not slightly, in a very different direction to where the student girl was standing. To somewhere at the back of the hut where nobody was standing at all. You mean that your memory of events and the direction in which the victim was pointing are both unclear? Yes, that's it. Unclear. I'm very, very unclear. Your Excellency, surely this proves the matter beyond all reasonable doubt. Yes, the woman may barely have been conscious, and yes, perhaps her finger wavered slightly, but there can be no doubt this was an attempt by the victim to confirm the identity of her assailant. Why? Because, as the court can see, there was no one other than the accused in the direction the victim was pointing. It is now abundantly clear that no one besides the accused could possibly have committed this crime. I am inclined to agree. In the absence of any credible argument to the contrary, I believe we can now conclude this trial. No! No, you can't. It's a freaking obvious thing. The headline's writing itself. Dashing lawyers, hopes dashed. 92 point across the whole page. We'll do an extra edition. This is a spurious blow, Susato. Unless we're able to identify the true culprit and substantiate our claim with evidence, the judge will give his ruling and the trial will be over. Unless which we know he was. He's told us that he was. But that's impossible, Father. We don't even know how the crime was committed yet. Impossible though the task may seem, we have no choice. Let's think back over everything we've learned thus far. Somewhere in all those details, I'm confident we'll find the clue we need. Ray gave us her account of how events unfolded in the defendant's antechamber before the trial resumed. She told us what happened at the precise moment Miss Brett was killed. The Englishwoman was sitting at the back of the hut, listening to what I was saying. And then, a moment later, she suddenly got to her feet before collapsing on the floor in front of me, with a knife in her back. How could Miss Brett have been stabbed in the back in a beach hut that was empty but for herself and Ray? Somewhere amid all the information we've gathered so far, there must be an answer to that question. Yeah, the guy who was directly behind her stabbed her in the back through the wall. I take it then that the defense has nothing further to add. So the gallant yokel student's luck finally runs out. I can't say I'm surprised. In that case, I am ready to deliver my final verdict on this matter. This is a crucial turning point now. If I can't establish what really happened, it's over. Where was the real culprit hiding, and how did he or she stab the victim? I don't know.
Objection!
With a knife. With a time knife! They painted the wall green, and then, and then because nobody can see the color black, a bunch of people faked it so that you could stab someone through the wall? Sure. Your Excellency, I respectfully ask you to postpone your adjudication for the time being. Not a time knife. That just makes things taste good. Oh, to what end, counsel? The defense would like to present the court with an alternative theory. An alternative theory that can explain who the victim was actually trying to implicate with her dying gesture. An alternative theory? Ha! None exists. There was someone else present at the scene who could have committed this crime. What? And the victim, Miss Brett, tried to reveal who it was to those around her at the time. By mustering all her remaining strength and pointing a trembling finger in the killer's direction. This is fiction, fantasy. Make up your mind, is it fiction or fantasy? Very well. As you seem so sure of yourself, counsel, I am prepared to hear your alternative theory. So, young Ryutaro Naruhodo. Yes, Your Excellency. You will present your latest theory to the court by means of this plan. At the moment the victim was stabbed, where exactly are you proposing the culprit was concealed? Like right there, probably.
Take that!
Take that! Naruhodo-san would never give up, and I'm a Naruhodo now. Just like Rey Skywalker. You just pick a last name and it's yours now. The true culprit who fatally stabbed Miss Brett was concealed in this location here. Are you mad, counsel? You're suggesting the culprit was outside the hut? What? It's rather fanciful for a dramatic courtroom moment. Order! But student lawyer Naruhodo-san Esquire, that makes no sense at all. You just pointed out the exact spot where I was hiding to get my scoop snap. But I didn't see any suspicious individuals loitering about. I can swear to that. Obviously, if the culprit had been outside the hut, there's no way he or she could have stabbed the victim who was inside the hut. Actually, Prosecutor Ouchie, there is a way. And, in point of fact, the defense can provide evidence strongly suggesting that that is precisely the way Miss Brett was killed, even though we're pretty sure she didn't die of a knife. She died of poison. You're bluffing! You're bluffing, you yokel! The defense's assertion is clearly too fantastical for the court to comprehend. You'll need to give us more guidance, counsel. What piece of evidence corroborates your theory that the victim was stabbed from outside the hut? The picture of a hole in the hut.
Take that!
Well, I've presented it now. Son of a bitch! Suggesting that this piece of evidence bears out your theory as to how the victim was stabbed? It's something of a windfall, Your Excellency. I think the word you were looking for, counsel, was downfall. If your theory is correct and the knife was thrust into Miss Brett's... Yeah. Freaking, I showed you the picture that has a Mad. They wanted the other picture where instead of a hole that is this big, there is a hole that is this big. That's the correct evidence. The original photographic print of the crime scene. Yes, it's clearly visible in this print. Not the other one, though. Not the right picture. The trace of the fatal thrust that was delivered from outside the beach hut. Do you take us for fools? There's no hint of any such thing. I'm not sure that everyone present would agree. Someone, at least, appears to have noticed what it is that I'm referring to. Counsel, I'm going to be proceeding to the court. It's the tiny little hole. It's so small that where is my magnifying glass? How come I don't have a magnifying glass?
Take that!
Look closely just here. Or look anywhere on the other photograph that I showed you. In the screen at the back of the hut, you can see the effects of a blade having been forced through the reeds. No, I can't. I can't see any such thing. It's true that the hut in question had 4 walls as you'd expect. However, by parting the reeds, a knife blade could easily break the 4th wall. This is extraordinary. Yes, she was killed by Deadpool. The true culprit actually stabbed the victim from outside the beach hut. Huh? Of everyone present at the scene, there's only one person who could have done that. Only one person who was directly outside the hut when Miss Brett was killed. Right, and many Memo-san, it could only have been you.
Objection!
This preposterous idea leaves me almost speechless. Just look at the photograph again. The victim lies almost exactly in the center of the beach hut, does she not? Are we to assume as part of this farcical scenario that the assailant was a knife thrower?
Objection!
No, of course not. Are you stupid? We're not? If you recall the testimony of the defendant about the events just before the victim's death. Inside the beach hut, I confronted Miss Brett, but she just sat on a stool at the back of the hut, smiling sweetly at me as if she knew she was untouchable. A stool. Have another look at the photograph. The slit in the reed screen would align perfectly with the back of a person who was sitting on that stool. My word! So in fact, the victim was killed whilst sitting on that stool by a stab wound to her back delivered through the reed screen unnecessarily because she was already seconds away from dying from poison, wasn't she? Having been attacked, Miss Brett rose to her feet instinctively. But then, unable to speak, she collapsed on the floor in the middle of the hut, before the defendant, Membami-san's appalled eyes. And that, Your Excellency, is the truth of what happened on the beach that day. By your silence, Minimemo-san, I take it you're guilty. This is absurd. That will do. It would appear we have a tacit admission of guilt from the witness. Accordingly, this court has successfully established the truth of this matter, which means that the defendant, Membami-san, is innocent of the crime. Are we getting joshed on? Is this a bamboozle? He's gonna shout, "Hold it," any moment. I finally made him cave. I must say, I've never been more proud. No, this can't be. The Ouchi clan can't. What of my growth of hope? It wasn't all an apparition. I can't accept this. I won't. I see no reason for the continuance of this trial. I will therefore move to the fake-out. There's the hold it. Ha! 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 Wow, this is all very convenient. This is how the highest court in our mighty empire delivers justice, is it? Suppressing well-meaning citizens' freedom to speak and branding them as criminals? Putting hats on their face? I didn't put this here. But we've established that the victim was stabbed from outside the hut through the reed screen walls. No one but you was in place at the time to have his hand on the hilt of the blade. It's a perfectly logical deduction. So your argument hinges on the location of whoever stabbed the Englishwoman, does it? Well, it seems a little irrelevant now. Irrelevant? Where she was stabbed, how she was stabbed. It doesn't matter. I mean, whether she was stabbed at all makes no difference if you think about it. After all, this trial's already shown the whole thing hinges on something else. What are you talking about? Brace yourself, little man. I'm talking about the fact that everything's changed because of the dirt you dug up. What? Enough obscurity. Explain yourself, witness. What's to explain? I'm talking about the poison, of course. So what if I stabbed her? Since when is that a crime? As long as she dies from something else? The poison? Let's ask the professor for a comment on the situation, shall we? I understand a deadly poison you were developing was stolen from your laboratory, correct? And it's been shown that this poison was administered to the victim, Miss Brett. Is that correct? That is correct. The unusual constriction of the victim's pupils are a sure sign that this particular poison was used. I see. So presumably that means that the victim already had the poison in her body before she was stabbed. Given that her pupils were clearly constricted, it seems highly likely, yes. If she had been dead already, the poison could not have circulated in her blood. How refreshing to hear the argument of a metropolitan mind. Precisely. It matters not a jot who stabbed whom, in whose back, and with whose blade. Because, quite simply, the Englishwoman's life was taken not by the knife, but by the poison. But that can be explained by the poison being on the blade, as I am already a dumbass who forgot. Forgotten already, have we, yokel? During these very proceedings, the laboratory of the professor at your side assisted in proving that the blade of the weapon used to attack the victim had no trace of poison on it whatsoever. Ugh. So let me get this down. The facts, as skillfully established by the defense in this trial, turn out to be a headline-making red herring. Is that about right? Ugh. Well... Ugh! This would be a good time for us to to say, like, alright, so you admit that you did stab her, though, right? Let's not leave that up in the air. Where does this leave us? How, in that case, did the poison enter the victim's body? There's an undeniably obvious answer to that. The lady most likely imbibed it. You mean she drank it? Use normal words. Have another look at the photograph here. As you can see... a bottle of carbonated water, frequently enjoyed in a carafe on the beach, as you do. A bottle of carbonated water and a glass had been knocked onto the sandy floor. Oh, this is knocked onto the sandy floor of the beach hut. The poison could have been slipped into either. So somebody made Miss Brett drink it. Well, what do you know? Look at those dashing eyes. This will make a great front page shot. Hey, why the bewitching stare? After all, I'm the last person you should be looking at. It would make no sense at all that I poisoned the woman, would it? I mean, that's been established already. Established? What are you talking about? Don't tell me you've forgotten. That's a little hard to believe, given that the person who established it was you. Me? What on earth does he mean? Capture those wide eyes. This is prime press fodder. This is. It would seem this trial is not destined to end yet after all. I hereby call upon the witness to give further testimony. That's great, that is. Let me get a shot of that magnificent beard, Your Excellency. I claim it to be impossible that you are the one responsible for administering the poison to the victim. You will explain to the court in your testimony the basis upon which you make such a claim. A journo and a man. I've never tried to run or hide from anything in my life. I'm not about to start now, because that's many-memoism. For a brief moment, I thought I'd illuminated the truth, but it slipped right back into obscurity again. Just where is this trial going to take us? The moon? It's the moon. Case 5 is on the moon. Call it. Oh yes, I stabbed the Englishwoman. And it's that very fact that proves I'm innocent. Because why would I have bothered to stab the woman if I'd already poisoned her? When I heard the student girl and that pompous English murderer arguing, it got my goat. If the courts weren't going to punish Brett for what she did, someone else would have to see justice done. So, you admit it then? That everything happened as I described? That you are the one who stabbed Miss Brett in the back through the reed screen? You blame this miserable country of ours. A country that bows to the pressure of foreign powers and lets murderers walk free. What kind of future can a country like that have? That's why I did it. I did what our pathetic leaders didn't have the guts to do. Slap bang in the middle of that charming lady's back, I plunged the blade of sweet justice right in there. And I poisoned her. Oops, wait, forget that last part. As someone who spends his life seeing that the truth is told, I feel really, really awful about giving false information in my testimony before. But as it turns out, there was somebody else who had it in for the victim and got to her before me. That's right, you guessed it. That pretty little student girl. Now there's a woman after my own heart. You're implicating Ray again. She's the one who gave the poison and the Englishwoman and ended her pitiful existence right after she body slammed her to the floor and plunged a knife in her back, like I said in my testimony. You have to believe me. I've only lied 4 times. And suddenly, snap. This journo here is off the hook. And on the perjury hook. And also on the stabbing someone non-lethally hook. The argument is sound. Certainly. Anybody here not certain? Anybody in chat? If the witness had administered the poison himself, he need only have waited for it to take effect. Subsequently stabbing the victim in the back would have been entirely nonsensical. It would have made people think that the girl did it. Oh, wait. And therefore, this reporter had nothing to do with the poisoning. Yes, it's all quite logical. That's right, it is logical and true. Glad you've all seen the light. Justice at last. This is unbelievable, and after I'd made so much progress in proving his guilt, is he going to get away with it now? Think of Kazuma-sama and Naruhodo-san. They never stopped looking for a way forward until the judge's final gavel, and then they just reloaded their save. Very well then, counsel. Proceed with what I assume to be your final cross-examination in this trial. Yes, Your Excellency. That actually reminds me. Nowhere in the previous case did we have one of the things where they said, don't... Oh, no, there might have been. There might have been one point where they were like, don't press or else that's a penalty. But also, usually, towards the end of a case, even if it's just the final case, there's a point where they go, if you get this wrong, it's your whole health bar. And they like flash the health damage. But maybe they don't do that anymore. Did the previous games have a life bar or just have life? Maybe they just had life. So maybe they haven't done that since like Apollo Justice or something. What exactly were they arguing about? About what happened in that restaurant 9 months ago. That's what. This... Wasn't she confronting her about the stolen poison? Nothing to do with Dr. Wilson. The student girl was laying into the Englishwoman for killing her beloved mentor, Dr. Wilson. Yes, John H. Wilson, professor of medicine, invited here from England by Professor Mikotoba, no less. Right, but the Englishwoman just jeered. Her case was to be heard by the British consular court in Shanghai. However, there's little doubt she would simply have been acquitted and sent back to her homeland a free woman. It was eating that student girl up inside. You could see it. It really felt for her. Yeah, she's going to jump in and say, no, that's not what happened. I can't stand here and listen to this tripe. They only eat tripe in England. This is Japan. Young girl, you stand accused here. You can't just blurt out whatever you feel like it. No, you can't. Sorry, but I'm in the middle of some very important testimony here. Just keep quiet and listen. But this awful man is making all of this up. Susato, please, you have to make them listen. Return to the dock at once, Membani-san. We're in the middle of a cross-examination. Your Excellency, please, I implore you, ignore the court rules. That journalist is clearly not a trustworthy witness. Exactly. He's a filthy, rotten, black-hearted, bigoted, great peeping Tom. Those are all correct. Oh, take it easy there. Please, I really think the court should hear what the defendant has to say. Your Excellency, I see no need whatsoever to entertain the accused's remarks. Oh, do they eat plenty of I guess. I'll take your word for it. I will grant the request of the defense. But, Your Excellency... This is likely to be the final cross-examination of these proceedings. As such, I believe it would be ill-advised to stifle the defendant's obvious concerns. So, whilst recognizing that this contravenes regular protocol, I hereby call upon the defendant to speak. Oh. Thank you so much, Your Excellency. It had nothing to do with Dr. Wilson. We were discussing the stolen poison. The stolen poison that killed the victim, you mean? I suspected her of being the one to steal it. I mean, just think about how she killed Dr. Wilson. That's true. Additionally, Miss Brett certainly had knowledge of the new poison. But surely it would be no easy task to steal a highly secret toxin from being developed for the government. Actually, we just left it out on the counter. We figured nobody would want it. All visitors to the laboratory are thoroughly searched when they leave, but we don't search inside of their swan. Even if a thief managed to avoid being seen by myself or a colleague, getting the poison out would be very difficult. That's true. I pestered Professor Mikotoba until he agreed to show me the poison when I visited his laboratory. But as I left, I was searched from top to tail. Miss Brett rather bluntly revealed the existence of the toxin we'd been developing, you see, and since Soseki-san expressed such an interest in it, I felt unable to refuse. Obviously, I gave nothing away, other than the fact that it was an extremely potent substance. I'm very ashamed of myself. It's just that I've had a singularly terrible experience with a deadly poison. How did they... Wait, what? Wait. What? The murder case in England... Or not murder case. Unconscious in a coma from a stabbing case that he was accused of in England, that was not poison at all. That was a knife. I wanted to look my old enemy in the eye. Surely you can understand that. To find out if my suspicions were true, I confronted Miss Brett about the poison. I told her that if there were to be an incident involving it somehow, it wouldn't just be the university, the military would be dragged into it, the whole government even. It would be a complete disaster. And how did Miss Brett respond to your concerns? She just curled those beautiful lips of hers and said she didn't know the first thing about it. In English, actually. Yes, Menimemo-san. One small question, if you don't mind. I do mind. Can't you see I'm busy? Clearly, you were outside the beach hut listening in whilst the defendant and Miss Brett were conversing. Presumably, then, it was you who wrote this article about what you'd heard. Exclusive deadly poison stolen from Yume Medical Research Laboratory. The story was published in this morning's edition of the Shoyu News. The details are too accurate for it to have been written by anyone else. Sorry, don't know what you're talking about. Yes, look at this. The entire article is almost what I said to Miss Brett, word for word. Ugh. Well, Menimemo-san? As a journo, and as a citizen of a free country, I don't have to reveal my sources. That's a founding principle of Menimemoism. I was clearly right about this. That reporter did write that article, and he based it on what he overheard from outside the hut. Okay. So that's what it was all about. You were trying to cover up the fact that you were listening in. That's why you came up with that stinking story about me arguing with her. Shut up. My stories never stink. Look, whatever you say, little girl, doesn't alter the facts. Your Excellency, there's something I want to say, and I want it to go on record. Very well. You may amend your formal testimony into something that will incriminate you for the murder. Point is, if you poison someone, there'd be no reason to go stab the person as well. I mean, I suppose he would have wanted to frame her. Could it also be that, like, because he doesn't know? I don't really know the answer to this. Perhaps you doubted the efficacy of the poison and sought to make sure your victim would die. That's kind of what I was thinking. Like, does he not know how fast it works? Like, he gave it to her, and she drank the thing, and she didn't instantly die, so he was like, oh no. That's horse dung! What? Like, from what? That'd be like pouring pepper on your Chinese ramen before you'd even tasted it. Completely reckless. Although, it might surprise you to learn, but I am a bit of an impetuous pepper pourer, as it happens. Once the victim had taken the poison, she would have been only minutes away from death. And yet this man then proceeded to stab her in the back as well. There has to have been some good reason for that. The reporter gave the poison to Miss Pratt, then clearly, he must have done it prior to Ray entering the hut. Yes, that's undeniable. Between him leaving the hut and the victim being stabbed, there's one very crucial change in the situation. Sorry? What change? The reporter overheard the conversation between Ray and the Englishwoman. Ah, yes, that's it. That's when Memo-san first found out the exact nature of the poison he used. Alright, so this is important. That's why they put pieces of it in orange. The exact nature of the poison. I guess he didn't know that it would shrink her pupils? What else do we know about this? I guess it's such symptoms would be suggestive of this toxin, so he was hoping that it had, like, that it would just kill her, but it's like, no, that everybody would know she died specifically of this poison, and that he didn't know that until just then. If the victim had unwittingly taken the poison already, the reporter would have had no reason to stab her. On the face of it, that logic sounds entirely reasonable. But there's no question that this man was responsible for Miss Brett's murder. If we could think of a plausible explanation as to why he might have stabbed her even after the poisoning, I feel sure that everything would drop into place. That's what we should be looking for. In order to do that, I must try to glean more information. Didn't he say the same thing 2 lines ago? Not there. Yeah, this is the same thing twice. So you still maintain that you didn't give the poison to the victim? Obviously, that'd be like putting a belt on your trousers when you were already wearing braces. Like, the braces? Is that the British term? We call them suspenders. The accused administered the poison, following which this witness stabbed the victim. An unforgivable act, certainly, but not one of murder. That crime rests on the accused's shoulders. That is how the law works, you see, yokel. Who knows, you may even learn something here today. 2 consecutive attempts on her life in the space of minutes? What is this, the Murder on the Orient Express? Which I still haven't read. I kind of know the twists to it already. But I still should go and read it. Also, I should go finish Umineko. I was making good progress on it, and then I stopped. I'm starting to think Ouchie poisoned her. Prosecutors would never murder anyone. Do something that evil and you got it coming. That's how the law works. The law of reckoning. That's not the kind of law this court upholds. You will reiterate why you were compelled to stab the victim then, witness. So this is a huge oversight for a Phoenix Wright game. If you are indeed supposed to present on the fifth statement, to have this one say, word for word, why would I have bothered to stab the woman if I'd already poisoned her? If you'd poisoned someone, there'd be no reason to go and stab the person as well. That's the same, it basically is. It's the same statement twice. So if you can present on 5, which I think they want you to do, even though I'm not sure of his reason just yet, it should also work on statement 2. And it's silly that it wouldn't. So I guess I'm going to present, even though I don't really fully understand the reasoning. I'm pretty sure it's this.
Objection!
Yeah, it is.